Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. The usual information, I think all of us know, which is that you will be recorded. There is a camera at the back of the room which will get the back of your head, except when you're turning round. And I think I will allow my fellow members to turn up. Hello. And should the fire alarm sound, there's no test of the fire alarm that's known for this afternoon, so if the fire alarm does sound, please leave the building by the stairways, and we meet opposite Queen Victoria's statue, and we could admire the nice work of Queen Victoria's statue. Right, first of all, apologies. Do we have any apologies for absence? Councillor Stagg?
Susie Horton, and I'm standing in the floor.
And Councillor Lee Hunt, who is unwell.
Right, okay.
Also, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Oodie and Councillor Smythe.
Councillor Oodie and Councillor Smythe have also sent their apologies. Right. Declarations of members' interests. Councillor Atkins.
I have a pecuniary interest in agenda item 5 as I'm an employee of the University.
Thank you. You will be leaving the...
I will leave the meeting entirely at agenda item 5. I won't return.
Right.
So, yeah.
In which case I need to inform you that there will be a private briefing afterwards on the nitrate pollution, should you wish to wait for it.
I will wait for it then, okay.
Yeah, but you wait outside. Okay. Okay, thank you. So, any other interests? No? Let's go through the minutes of the meeting of the Planning Committee held on Wednesday the 17th of July. I'll take them page by page for any corrections. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7. Do I have your approval to sign those as the correct record? Yes, thank you. Updates on previous planning applications. Sim.
Thank you, Chair. We've got a number of appeal decisions we've received since the last committee. We've got one for 20 Montgomery Road in Southsea, which was for a 7-bed house in multiple occupation. It was dismissed, but solely on the issue of nitrates. We also had another application at 6 Lawrence Road, which was the conversion of an existing detached 3-storey dwelling into 2 dwellings. That was dismissed on nitrates and living accommodation grounds. We also had another application at 70 to 78 Albert Road, Southsea. Development was for the conversion of an existing store to form a dwelling house. That again was refused on residential amenity grounds and nitrates. And obviously there was the case that we reported last time, which was the 32 Norman Road, which was again a 7-bed house of multiple occupation, which was dismissed on nitrates grounds. On that one we actually had a case of costs against us, and that was successfully dismissed, so that's good. And last of all, we've got one for a day nursery at 1 Dice Arts Avenue, Portsmouth, which was for basically a day nursery with a flat over the top. The site, it was allowed. Nitrates weren't considered to be an issue because obviously it's got a residential element there already, so there's no overnight increase in overnight stay. So those are the updates, Chair, on the appeal decisions.
It is certainly interesting to see that the Planning Inspectorate upholds our decisions where we have the nitrates as a major issue. Right, members, I have been reminded that I did not deal with the minutes of the special meeting which we held on the 24th of July to deal with Kendall's Wharf. I will deal with that now. Page 1, page 2, page 3. Since Matthew, you and I were the only two who were actually there at that meeting, acceptable to you? Good. Well, I will sign those as well as a correct record. We now come to the single planning application for this afternoon, which is Trust Twin Satellite Flat 10 Langston Village, Tree Preservation Order 215 to fell a Lombardy tree. We have one deputation from Ms. Janice Birkinshaw, and if Mrs. Birkinshaw will come to the table, I will ask whoever is presenting this afternoon, it's you? Right. I'll ask our Tree Preservation Officer to present the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors. As previously stated by the Chair, this application is for the felling of a Lombardy poplar tree at Langston Student Village. The tree is actually situated on the sports field side of Furze Lane. It's identified on the plan there as tree 16, and it is a Lombardy poplar. The tree is protected by Tree Preservation Order 215 and forms part of a row of Lombardy poplars which are also protected that stretch down the eastern boundary of the sports field site. And whilst the loss of any tree is unfortunate, the extent of the decay within tree 16 is considered to such an extent that its removal would be in the interests of public safety and good arboricultural management, given the proximity to the public footpath, bus route and the university campus. There will be an obvious impact on the visual amenity of the area. However, the inclusion of a suitably worded condition will require the planting of a replacement tree to continue the amenity value into the future. It's an aerial picture of Furze Lane. Thank you. And T16 is approximately there. The area is of mixed character with university uses to the east and west of the tree and residential uses to the north and south. This is in fact Broome Square Estate, and then to the bottom we're down to Loxway Road. So I undertook a site visit on the 3rd of July, my first visit to the site, and my first impression of the tree is that it is struggling because it has a particularly sparse canopy, and you can look in comparison with the trees beyond it, the same species in the same row. They are of a far denser and much deeper green hue, and my first impression was this tree has obviously got problems and is struggling. Once I got a little closer to the tree, at the base I observed that there's an area of decay here, which is an old pruning scar, and adjacent to that wound are the fruiting bodies of a fungi called Ganoderma. Ganoderma is a decay fungi which causes a white rot in the wood of the host tree, and it degrades the wood by selective delignification, and essentially means that lignin and hemicellulose within the tree are broken down and only leaving the cellulose intact. Cellulose and lignin are important components of trees. Cellulose gives trees their flexibility, lignin gives wood and trees its rigidity. Removal of lignin from a tree through decay destroys the structural integrity of the wood and leaves a mass of woody material with a texture of wet bread. I undertook a further visit on the 31st of July, and again my first observation was that the tree has significantly denuded in leaf over the intervening 3 to 4 weeks, and the tree is actually in quite a poor state. Now, the loss of leaves often indicates dysfunction in the cambium layer or root failure within the tree, but both result in the same thing, which is the breakdown in the transport of water and nutrients up and down the tree. On closer inspection, it became apparent that the fungal activity had increased and additional fungal fruiting bodies were developing in 2 other areas of the trunk between the root buttresses. Fungi only invest resources in reproduction, the production of fungal fruit in brackets, when they have sufficient capacity to do so. They have resources to spare and invest in reproduction. And the increase in fungal activity within this tree and the production of new fruiting bodies suggests that the Ganoderma is well established within the trunk and the root collars. Using a tool called an increment borer in two opposing areas, I confirmed that the decay is extensive. One of the samples, this one, lacked structural integrity to the point that as I extracted the sample from the tree, large section of it just blew away in the wind. That was left was discoloured, soft and mushy, and smelled strongly of mushrooms, which are indicators of fungal activity. I took a second core sample, and whilst this exhibited greater structural integrity and withdrew intact, it was, however, discoloured, soft, wet, and smelled strongly of mushrooms, and when manipulated between my fingers, broke apart and failed easily. To surmise, given the proximity of decay to the base of the tree, the lack of structural integrity of the wood that close to the root and the bottom of the trunk suggests that that is an imminent failure. It's only a matter of time. In 2015, one of the same row of trees at the top end of Furs Lane collapsed and crushed the bus stop, and that had not been identified as being a possibility for failure. So we do actually have the opportunity to stop this one before it does fail. I had a brief discussion with two of the landscaping team who work on the university site, as they're both former employees of PCC on one of our contracts, and we spoke about the tree and the birds in the area, and Alan Dockery, the senior landscaper down there, stated that by and large the starlings in the area have abandoned this tree as a roost because the lack of leaf cover means they don't have any protection anywhere to hide. So they've adopted the trees adjacent to it. And that's me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for a very comprehensive introduction. Mrs. Birkinshaw, you have 6 minutes to present your case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the 22nd of July, when I saw the proposal to fell another Lombardy poplar within the university grounds at Satellite Flat 10, Langston Student Village, Furs Lane, I looked up the application on the council's enquiry site, but there was no plan nor a report on the condition of the tree, and therefore no reasons to fell. As demolition is in progress at the QEQM site to remove all the 1960s student flats, the application could have been in respect of the poplar tree which is within the site of the accommodation, a good healthy specimen. So I contacted my ward councillor, who kindly referred the application to committee. Subsequently, there has, as we have just heard, been an inspection of the tree, which indicates it is compromised by disease. I walked down the bus lane and saw one poplar within the university playing field which looks in very poor health, so I am now, or as of prior to writing, assuming that this is T16. We've now seen this on the photographs and the plan. But there's still no site plan on the council site, only a map of the whole city, which makes it difficult to identify particular trees. Reading the report of the tree's condition, it must be fairly robust to have resisted the high winds over Friday and Saturday, which affected our area. However, it is clear the committee will agree to remove the tree in view of its condition. I have taken the opportunity today to make a plea for another poplar to be used as the replacement. It was back in 2001 that proposals to remove 8 of the poplars in this field was agreed. But at that time, the university agreed to our request to replace like for like. I'm pleased to say that the new poplars along this fence line are thriving and will help to maintain the integrity of the landscape and the sense of place and history in our area. You will have heard many times how the local artist Edward King painted these trees, and many of his works are in the City Museum. I attended the Van Gogh in Britain exhibition at Tate Britain last week and saw how the Dutch painter had been influenced by British artists, including Edward King, whose lithographic style he imitated. These trees are a historical asset and deserve to be maintained by keeping the same species of tree. We've learned this week of the Council's plans to emphasise its links with significant bird species, and in Milton we enjoy a murmuring of starlings. It was large enough last week to be viewed from Hayling Island, sweeping over the Milton foreshore. The tall poplars provide good roosts and nesting sites for these birds. In Reedling Drive, we've already lost about 4 of the poplars, and others have been greatly reduced in height since they have been located in private gardens since development of that area. I'm here simply, therefore, today to ask if permission, given back in 2001, for poplars to be retained along this fence line be repeated to allow T16 to be replaced by a poplar.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Councillor Stagg.
Yes, I think I'm right in saying this is one of many Lombardy poplars in that area that have reached the end of their lives, and they have a relatively short lifespan, don't they? 30 years, maybe?
Yeah, it's slightly longer than that, Councillor. Poplar is a short-lived species. 75 years is a good age for a Lombardy poplar. They're considered to be a pioneer species amongst trees and very fast-growing. But as a consequence of their fast growth, they sacrifice strength and quality of wood for the speed of getting up there into the light. Consequently, they're easily colonised by fungi and have a tendency to snap in high winds. That's the nature of poplars. Some of these trees that were painted by King must be at the end of their safe working lives, because they were damn big trees when he painted them in the 1940s. And if you look at the picture of his the haystack on the farm, they were significant trees then, and you know, we are pushing it, trying to keep nursing them along. You can't cure a fungal infection in a tree. So as a consequence, I would suggest that felling is the option. I personally may not recommend poplar as a replacement planting species, but if it can be managed safely for 75 years, then perhaps poplar is the answer in this environment, because it is a slighter open environment than the housing estate is adjacent to it.
Can I have a second part? My question is it any likelihood that the fungal infection will spread to the other trees around it?
There is a possibility. This type of fungi spreads by producing and dropping spores, which are windborne, and may also be carried in water. If the other trees are compromised in any way or stressed, then yes, there is a distinct possibility they could be colonised by the same fungi and will suffer the same fate. But I can't predict that. It's a little bit of an unscientific forecast on my part, but I would suggest yes, there is that possibility.
Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. Andy, along that, can you bring up the tree map, please? So along that line, there's been, because we consider each application on its merits, so we see that this come forward to us in a bit of a piecemeal way, but along Furze Lane, how many of the former Lombardy poplars have been replaced with alternative species, and how many of them have been replaced by poplars? Have you got any idea? Because I think the residents' point around this has always been maintaining the rhythm of the landscape so that it might not exactly look like Edward King's painting, but you can clearly see that was where the row of trees was that he did that. So what I'm worried that we're ending up with in increments here is some poplars being replaced because on one occasion the argument was one, and then a range of other trees going in at different times, which doesn't do that. It doesn't reflect that rhythm that's always been there. So could you give us a bit more information on that?
I'm doing this from memory, councillor, but as
That's fine.
as far as I can recall for Furs Lane, we've had one previous application for the removal of one tree and its replacement, not necessarily by a poplar, but by another fastigiate species, same shape, that upright form. And the other poplar at the bottom of Furs Lane was significantly reduced in order to nurse it along for a little while yet. It's made a huge amount of regrowth, but ultimately it's going to have to go the same way. The tree that failed up by the bus stop, I cannot recall whether a replacement was planted for that or not. So there are 2, maybe 3 replacements in there. If not poplar, they will be fastigiate species, so it will be the same upright form and longer lived and slightly sturdier trees.
So, Chair, is that right? Which of the options that you've put in recommendations for the conditions would give us that same upright form? Because you've got 2 options in there, haven't you? You've got a hornbeam and something else. Is it the it's a hornbeam or probably a fastigiate oak. Both of them will give you that very similar form. Ultimately, the hornbeam will spread as it ages, but initially they're quite an upright habit when they grow. So, question to Sim then, is it possible for us to amend the wording of that condition to say that a suitable replacement to retain the rhythm of the landscape with a similar shaped tree as possible?
It's within, this is your decision to make if you wish to replace it with a poplar or a similar species which gives the same form, then it's entirely up to you. So you can actually make those amendments as you see fit.
Thank you.
That concludes questions, comments. Members, comments. Councillor Pitt.
I'd like to propose the officer's recommendations, Chair, but with an amendment to the wording to make sure that whatever we do replace it with does reflect similar form, at least to the Lombardy poplars, to enable the residents to have the visual amenity that they would like to see in future years. I don't think that constantly replacing trees every 70 years is necessarily an efficient thing to do, and actually maybe doesn't even give the environment its best outcomes in the longer term when the more mature a tree gets, the more actual habitat opportunities it offers for wildlife. Whereas if they're coming down every 70 years, that's not happening, and we're changing nesting patterns and other stuff. So if we can keep the rhythm, work with a more robust species, I think that would be the outcome that we'd all be happy with.
Councillor Norton.
Happy to second.
Any other comments from members? Okay. Right. Let us have a look at the final condition, because we will need to get the wording on that right. I would think. We're going to get the wording right.
Chair, if it helps, the replacement hornbeam or the streetwise, if neither of those does what the intention or proposed, I'm sure Andy can name 2 species that would.
Absolutely. So if you want absolute longevity, Quercus roba fastigiata, which is the good old English oak, but it's an upright version of it and less spreading. The alternative that I gave and the recommendations here was Tilia platyphilus streetwise, which is a lime of a very upright habit and commonly used as a street tree, or Carpinus betulus, the hornbeam, in its fastigiate form. However, ultimately that will spread.
So can we delete the hornbeam and put in the other one that you just suggested just now, that I'm not going to pretend for a second I understood the Latin, not the lime because that's in here, but the other one.
The oak, yeah.
Yes.
Apologies, members, for those that haven't met me. I'm Ian Maguire, I'm the new Assistant Director here. I would suggest there may be an easier way to do this rather than trying to prescribe trees now, because certainly the traditional English oak does spread quite a lot as it gets older. We could simply just shovel it around a little bit and simply require a replacement heavy standard tree of a species agreed in writing by the local planning authority. And having heard members and the member of the public's comments, obviously the team can then negotiate with the university to find the right tree that meets that form and size, because they may have other suggestions as well. So we can simply require them to submit that for our approval in due course. So it would be to rearrange it slightly, so it would simply be a replacement heavy standard tree, as specified in British Standard, etc., to be placed of a species to be agreed in writing by the local planning authority prior to felling. And that would cover all your needs without having to worry too much about naming a species today.
Thank you. Is that acceptable to the proposer and the seconder? Councillor Pitt? Yes. Councillor Norton? Thank you. In which case, you have that wording down. Fine. Can I put it to the vote? Those in favour of the officer's recommendation as modified. Right, thank you very much. That concludes the public part of the meeting. Thank you very much to the press and to Mrs. Birkinshaw for your attendance. Well, since you're the only person here, yes, what do you want?
Can the neighbourhood forum be informed of the species of tree that is selected? And as I
Are you able to do that? Right, thank you. That concludes the meeting. Can you turn the machine off? And as people go out, could they wave at Councillor Atkins and tell him to come back in? Thank you.